have a slow first half, but he ends it on a high note. And Golden State will go to the locker room with a 5-point lead.
It's time for Warriors Wrap-Up. We'll bring you into the locker room and hear from Coach Kerr and the players. Highlights from the game. Warriors Wrap-Up starts now.
Yes, it does. Welcome in. It's Warriors Wrap-Up here on 95.7 The Game. Mark Randy with you after the Warriors' third consecutive win on this road trip. It's now a 3-1 trip, and no matter what happens on Sunday, the Warriors have a winning 5-game trip. At worst, they'll be 3-2. At best, they'll be 4-1. They're in San Antonio coming up to close up this road trip. And the Warriors have bounced back after a rough beginning to this trip. Remember, way back on Sunday, 5 days ago, it was the disappointing loss in Minnesota with all the questions about Steph Curry's minutes and rotations. Since then, the Golden State Warriors have won in Miami, in Charlotte, and in Orlando. And in all three of those games, they've held their opponents under 100 points. 3 consecutive games, all of which on the road. The Warriors have held their opponents under 100 points. Tonight is in Charlotte. Final score 115-97. The Warriors now on the season are 39-34. And as we speak at this very moment, they have a game-and-a-half lead on the Houston Rockets for the 10 seed in the Western Conference. The Rockets are underway as we speak right now in Utah, so we will keep you updated on that score while we're still on the air here on Warriors Wrap-Up on 95.7 The Game. But at the end of the night, the Warriors will either have a 2-game lead over Houston plus the tiebreaker or a 1-game lead over Houston plus the tiebreaker. It's all dependent on what happens in Utah tonight between the Rockets and the Jazz. But that's not the story of Warriors Wrap-Up tonight here on 95.7 The Game. It is the short-handed Dubs earning an 18-point win on the road in Charlotte. Now, this is not an incredibly impressive win. Charlotte is one of the worst teams in the NBA. They're battered, they're bruised, they're beaten, missing a number of key players, including LaMelo Ball, who just recently got officially announced as out for the rest of the season. And if you are Charlotte, why would you bring him back even if he was ready at this point, considering you're now 18-55 on the season? So it wasn't the most difficult of circumstances for the Warriors to go into shorthanded, but you're without Jonathan Kuminga again. You're without Dario Saric, not that that means much for the Warriors recently. And then a late scratch about, 20 minutes prior to tip-off, Klay Thompson announced as out with knee tendonitis. There's a lot of knee soreness, knee tendonitis going around the Warriors right now. It's the same thing that Steve Kerr has said Jonathan Kuminga is dealing with. Doesn't seem to be anything serious for any of these guys, but a lot of Warriors on the injury report lately due to knee soreness or knee tendonitis, and Klay Thompson was a surprise scratch right before tip-off tonight. He did not play, but the Warriors bounced back with a really nice team effort. Stephen Curry, 23 points. Andrew Wiggins, 20 points. Trace Jackson-Davis, 18. How about Moses Moody off the bench with 15? He was 4 for 5 from downtown. Really good to see Moses Moody's shots falling. Kevon Looney deserves a major round of applause from this Warrior fan base. Was Mr. Iron Man, never missed a game, had the second longest active games played streak, consecutive games played streak in the NBA, and then has fallen out of the rotation. You haven't heard a peep of complaint from him. He bounces back, steps in when the Warriors need him to. He had 8 points in 10 minutes off the bench, 7 rebounds as well. So the story of this one tonight for the Warriors, a real team effort across the board. I mentioned Andrew Wiggins with those 20 points. Maybe he did his best work elsewhere. 8 rebounds and 8 assists. Was solid defensively as well. And the Warriors are looking at their 3rd consecutive road win. A lot to be happy about if you are a Warrior fan. I know, again, it is just the Charlotte Hornets. But no game's easy in the NBA. I mean, this was a game last time these two teams met in Chase Center when the Warriors did not even get over 100 points. Now, they won that game by double figures because they held the Hornets to 84, but that was a grind-out, tough, physical basketball game for the Warriors, and they got the win, and they do it again this time by scoring 115, holding the Hornets to 97. Again, that's now 3 consecutive games the Warriors have held their opponents under 100 points. It was in Miami to begin that stretch when they held the Heat to 92 points. They held the Magic a couple of nights ago to 93, and they hold Charlotte tonight to 97 points. And when you do that in today's NBA, you're going to win a lot of basketball games, and that is what the Warriors have done the last 3 games of this homestand. All right, 888-957-9570. That's the number to call here on Warriors Wrap-Up. It's also the Comcast Business text line, 888-957-9570. It's Mark Randy with you here on 95.7 The Game. Keeping an eye on our YouTube chat as well. YouTube.com/957 The Game. I see Ernie. I see GSW Vera. I see Drew Down. I also see Drew Down's in 2 places at once. I'll get to Drew Down on the calls here in just a little bit, but a couple of things that stood out to me in this one. I mentioned Andrew Wiggins. I thought he was really, really good, and that's now 2 consecutive games where Andrew Wiggins has played really good basketball. And, you know, he's had a pretty decent stretch of solid basketball now for a bit for a couple of weeks now, a handful of weeks now. Now, it hasn't always been super consistent. It's not as if he's scoring 20 and grabbing 8 rebounds every single night. These last 2 games, I think, have certainly been the high watermark for him of late. But it's not as if he's coming from a position deep in the depths of bad play. Like it hasn't been that bad for Andrew Wiggins recently. He's just at times a little bit of a frustrating guy to watch because he'll give you a night like he did tonight, 28 and 8, and then he'll come back out the next night and give you 7 and 2. And it's a little bit frustrating. But that has not been the case recently for Andrew Wiggins. He was great in Orlando, was one of the biggest reasons why the Warriors won that game, running away with it in the fourth quarter. He opened that fourth quarter as aggressive as we've seen him all season long, and he was awesome in that fourth quarter, scoring bucket after bucket after bucket to begin the period. Steph Curry then kind of put the finishing touches on the win in Orlando, but they don't get in that position to put finishing touches on a win without Andrew Wiggins' aggressiveness and effectiveness to begin that fourth quarter. So for him to follow what was one of his better performances of the season with another one tonight, I think it's really meaningful for Andrew Wiggins and the Golden State Warriors. Again, he finishes with 20 points tonight, 8 rebounds, and 8 assists. He was 7 for 17 from the field, so a little bit of a volume scorer tonight. The jumper wasn't really falling with a ton of regularity for Wiggins tonight. He was 2 for 6 from downtown, missed a couple of mid-range jumpers, but you saw the Wiggins again where he's slashing to the hoop, he's driving to the hoop, had a really, really nice reverse layup. He jumped from like the right block and glided through the air, put a little bit of English and spin on the ball to bank it home from the left side when he went up and under on the reverse. A couple of really nice moves like that for Wiggins. He was getting out in transition. The Warriors were finding him. And he's taking advantage of the increased opportunity without Klay Thompson tonight, without Jonathan Kuminga the last couple of games, and he's playing really well right now. Now, all eyes on him again come Sunday when the Warriors are in San Antonio. We'll see if he can make it 3 consecutive really nice games. That would be a major, major boost for the Warriors if they have, any hopes of turning this season into anything even somewhat positive. They're going to need Andrew Wiggins to keep it up. So tonight was a really good sign in that regard. I also thought Trayce Jackson-Davis was awesome in this game, and it almost sounds like a broken record at this point. Trayce Jackson-Davis got the start in part because Jonathan Kuminga did not play. I would imagine if Kuminga was available, Kuminga would have started, obviously. That would have moved Draymond back to the 5, and Trayce Jackson-Davis would not have started. Don't know that for sure. It's just my take on the situation. But Trayce Jackson-Davis took advantage, and he was awesome in this game. 18 points. He had 8 rebounds, 9 of 13 from the field, had 3 block shots. He leads the Warriors in blocks this season. And something that's really standing out to me in terms of Trayce Jackson-Davis's ability to impact basketball games, he is such an underrated finisher around the rim. I think a lot of times we see a young, big guy who has all these dunks, and we just think, all right, well, he's just finishing easy lands, and he's dunking on people, and these are all really easy shots. He is a really underrated finisher. I mean, you see some of the finishes for Trayce Jackson-Davis tonight specifically, but also all season long, and I guess to be a little bit more specific than all season long, maybe the last 6 weeks or so. I mean, how often does he take a little bit of a body bump, jumps into a defender who's going straight up, draws some contact, but it's legal contact, so no foul, and he finishes as he's like falling back down after making contact with the defender. And he's able to finish proficiently with the left hand, with the right hand. He's got very good footwork. He'll use a little head fake, a pump fake. He'll do a jab step from in close, get the defender going one way, then he'll step the other and finish with an easy right hand off the backboard. He does have, obviously, pretty good hops. He can jump. He's not the most athletic guy out there. He's not the tallest guy out there, so he doesn't really overpower you with his physical attributes all that often, but he does everything else so well, and I really think Trayce Jackson-Davis is an underrated scorer around the rim. He's not just the guy who's in the dunker spot and who's catching lobs and who's getting his baskets spoon-fed to him by Hall of Famers like Chris Paul and Steph Curry. No, and even Draymond Green, who obviously passes the ball and dishes out a ton of assists. It's not just that. And if we were to describe Trayce Jackson-Davis that way, it would not be fair to him because he is a hell of a finisher around the rim, and he's been showing it a lot lately. I thought tonight that was on display. He was really, really good in this game. Trayce Jackson-Davis with 18 points and 8 rebounds. And if you're the Warriors, you got to love what you saw from him, from Andrew Wiggins. You got ho-hum 23 from Steph, 9 of 18 from the field, 4 of 11 from downtown. I mean, that's like subpar for his standards, but the Warriors didn't need it. It was a perfectly paced game, specifically in the second half in terms of what the Warriors needed. It was a little sleepy in the first half, but ultimately the Warriors took over in the second half. They outscored the Hornets 65-52 in the second half, and they kind of cruised in that fourth quarter to a victory. And Moses Moody, finally getting his three-point shot to fall. He was 4 for 5 from downtown tonight, and he's shooting and hitting the three with a little bit more regularity the last handful of games. And that is a great sign for Moses Moody because he has really struggled to hit the three of late, but more lately, the last handful of games, he's gotten them to go. 4 for 5 tonight. Moody with 15 points off the bench. A big boost for the Warriors in his nearly 25 minutes off the bench. I thought there was a chance Moody would start tonight once Klay Thompson was the late scratch. Steve Kerr decided to go with the veteran Chris Paul over Moses Moody, over Brendan Pajemski, over someone like Lester Quinones, over GP2 potentially, who all probably were in Steve Kerr's mind when deciding who was going to start in place of Klay. But Moody, despite not starting, he played well in his 25 minutes off the bench, making 4 or 5 from 3. So all positives there for the Warriors. The biggest ones for me, Andrew Wiggins, Trayce Jackson-Davis, and Moses Moody. And there's, of course, a lot more to get to. And we will, of course, here on 95.7 The Game. It's Mark Randy with you on Warriors Wrap-Up. You're listening to 95.7 The Game, KGMZ FM and HD1 San Francisco. Always live on the free Odyssey app, Twitch, and YouTube, powered by First NorCal Credit Union. As always, and as promised, out to the phones we go here on Warriors Wrap-Up. 888-957-9570. That's the number to call. And up first is Drew Down, and Drew is in Tracy. Drew, what's up? You're on 95.7 The Game with Mark Randy. How you doing today, Drew?
Hey, what's going on, Grandy? Good evening. Great win for the Warriors. At this point, I really don't care who the opponent is. I know Charlotte's been really bad this year, but we've seen all over the NBA where, teams are losing to subpar opponents. The Celtics just blew a 30-point lead to the Hawks. So I really don't care. TGIF, thank God it's Friday, but also TGFT, thank God for Trayce. I thought he was really good tonight. His ability to score in the paint, like you said, he can finish with power, but he can also finish with some finesse. I think he's definitely progressing, being a little more patient. I loved his game tonight. He scoring, rebounding, he had 3 blocks, 2 steals, no turnovers. So it's just fun to watch. It's been a while, since the Warriors had a guy who can, really be a threat on the pick and roll and the dive, and also, change shots, on defense in the lane. So this is a great game from Trayce, and it's just really fun to watch. So shout out Trayce, and also Andrew Wiggins, man, another great game from Wiggins. 28 and 8, 2 steals and a block. I love the way he was playing. His ability to hit shots, get to the rim, and his defense. So, just a great game from Wiggins. Obviously, without Klay, no Wiggins. I think tonight was a classic, strength and numbers game. 35 assists, They had 5 guys with at least 7 boards. So another thing was everybody who played had a positive plus minus. So, the first half was a little bit shaky there. Steph hit that 3 at the end of the half to kind of, boost the lead a little bit. But coming out in the second half and the third, they took care of business and beat a bad team, which they needed to do. So great to see. And they got to keep rolling, man. The Rockets are right on their heels. So I know they play the Spurs on Sunday, so they got to beat the Spurs. Got to keep rolling. So good win, and let's see if they can finish out the season strong. Thanks, Grady.
Yeah, good call, Drew. Appreciate it. Yeah, you're right. The Rockets are right on the Warriors' heels, and they have begun, by the way, in Utah. Late first quarter, the Jazz have a 6-point lead over the Rockets. We'll keep you updated. We will not, of course, be on the air when that game is done, but we will keep you updated throughout Warriors wrap-up today here on 95.7 The Game. Again, it's Jazz 19, Houston 13 in Utah. Sub 2 to go in the first quarter. Warrior fans are big Jazz fans tonight. If that score holds and the Jazz do beat the Rockets, the Warriors would be 2 games up over Houston, plus they already have locked up the tiebreaker over the Rockets. So this would be a big result if that does hold. There is another Warriors-Rockets game coming up later on in Houston, later on, and actually in a little bit for the Warriors. We'll talk a little bit more about the schedule towards the end here of Warriors wrap-up, but that game certainly is circled right now for Warriors fans. Big Jazz fans tonight. It is a 6-point lead for Utah over Houston right now, late in the first quarter in Utah. I think Drew was right. There's a lot to be happy about, and at this point, there's no really use in qualifying a win or a loss, a blowout win, blowout loss. Because who we played. Charlotte is 18-55. Doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter who the Warriors' opponent is anymore. You just got to stack some wins. It doesn't matter if you're playing Charlotte and San Antonio as the Warriors are, or you're playing Boston and Milwaukee. You play who's on your schedule, and you better get wins, because if you don't get wins now, you're not going to have any chance at a postseason. Not only not going to have a chance at a postseason series, you might not even have a chance at a play-in game, let alone 2 play-in games, and let alone a series against maybe the Denver Nuggets, the reigning NBA champions. You are in danger still, although you have stabilized with your last 3 wins. You are still in a little bit of danger of falling out of the play-in entirely. And all the conversation about the Warriors, not caring about the play-in and not wanting to be the 10, the Rockets certainly care a whole lot more. Maybe the Rockets care a little bit more because they just want a sniff, a taste of any postseason basketball. Meanwhile, the Warriors have these incredibly high expectations where, they want to be the 3 seed at worst, right? And last year they were the 6, and it felt weird going to Sacramento for games 1 and 2 of a series. It felt weird, right? The Warriors are not used to that. So maybe there's a little bit of truth to the fact that Houston is a little more starved for some semblance of postseason basketball. But the idea that the Warriors do not care enough to go out and try to win these basketball games always seemed odd to me. I mean, just watch how Stephen Curry reacted 2 nights ago in Orlando. Not only, emotional and tears welling up in his eyes when Draymond gets ejected, but kicking over the chairs on the bench when he hits the dagger 3 to close things up and, doing the night, one of the most aggressive nights we've seen from him in a really long time, maybe in his entire career. You can't tell me that he doesn't still want it. And if Steph Curry still wants it, then I guarantee you this team wants it. So that conversation never really felt right to me. And it's part of what made the Steph Curry minutes and rotation conversation so odd. It almost felt like the Warriors were telling you, this isn't worth a lot to us. But their actions since then have said, this is worth a hell of a lot to us. We want to get to the play-in. We want a shot at LeBron in the 9-10 game. We want a shot at maybe KD, maybe Fox and Sabonis after that. And then, put us up against the champs. We don't care. We'll see what we got. That's what these last handful of games have felt like to me. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to work out. It doesn't mean it's going to happen and they're going to put a run together. But the idea that they do not care if they fall out of the play-in, that's madness. That's madness to me. And I think the Warriors' performance the last handful of games, the last 3 games specifically, the last handful of days, has shown that. Sure, would they rather be the 6, the 5, the 4, the 3 as opposed to the 10? Yes, obviously. But the idea that they don't care if they're the 10 or the 11, miss me with that. That's just wrong. Flat out wrong. Garbage. No. I'm not having that conversation. And I think if the Warriors, the organization, players heard that, they'd be offended. They care about this. And I think Stephen Curry is leading the way on that, and he would not have reacted the way he did in Orlando on Wednesday if they didn't feel that way. If they did not feel that way, he and the rest of the team would not have reacted the way that they did. All right, 888-957-9570. Mark Randy with you here on Warriors Wrap-Up. 888-957-9570. That's the number to call. It's also the Comcast Business text line. Shout out, as always, to the YouTube chat, youtube.com/957thegame, powered by First NorCal Credit Union. I want to jump back to Andrew Wiggins because I think the last couple of days and games for Andrew Wiggins has really been interesting. So, Andrew Wiggins, let me bring up his performance from Wednesday in Orlando just so I can get you those numbers. Here it is. Andrew Wiggins on Wednesday in Orlando, 23 points. He was 8 for 17 from the field, 3 of 6 from downtown, 6 rebounds. And then tonight in Charlotte, 20 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists, 7 for 17 from the field, 2 for 6 from downtown. Andrew Wiggins is in this really interesting situation where you have this conversation about wanting and pleading with Andrew to be more aggressive. You just want to see Wiggins aggressive, attacking the paint, finishing among the trees. He's got the athleticism to do it. We saw an incredible acrobatic reverse layup tonight. He's got that in his bag. He has that ability. Remember the dunk on Luka Doncic in the Western Conference Finals nearly 2 years ago now? He has that in him. It's buried deep away sometimes, but he has it in him. So every time you watch Andrew Wiggins play and he turns in an 11-point night and he goes 3 for 11 from the field, you're just wondering, like, Andrew, come on, we know you're capable of more. So then naturally the conversation goes to, and you've heard, how many times have you heard Steve Kerr? It was Klay Thompson post-game in Miami, I believe. Post-game in Miami on Tuesday, essentially saying, we need Andrew to be aggressive when he is that kind of aggressive player. Actually, I think it was Klay post-game on Wednesday after the Orlando game when Wiggins kind of willed the Warriors back. It was Klay saying the same thing that we've heard Steve Kerr say time and time again. We need Andrew to be more aggressive. When he's that aggressive, we win. Without him being that aggressive, we can't win. Andrew is the key. You get that conversation all the time, and you understand why. Again, because you get these glimpses, these performances of greatness. Not just good, of greatness. Like tonight was great. 28-8 for Andrew Wiggins today in a win. And it felt relatively ho-hum, not that big of a deal. And that's a compliment. When you get a quiet 28-8, it means you're doing it in a way where the expectation, when you're not really taken aback by someone doing that. Like it's a way I've paid a compliment to Jonathan Kuminga recently. He's been scoring 20 points in his sleep the last couple of weeks because that's what we've come to expect, and because we know he's capable of doing that on a consistent basis. We've seen Wiggins bring you 28-8 before. It just has been a while, but when he does it, you realize this is what this guy is capable of. And tonight it felt like a relatively quiet 28-8 from Andrew Wiggins. And again, I mean that in an entirely complimentary way. So you get a performance like that from Wiggins, and then the next time out, say, you get the 11 points again on 3 of 11 shooting. And you can get why you have these Warriors fans and members of the organization pleading with him after good performances and bad. Like, we need this from you, Andrew, more often. Come on. I mean, it even got to a point where Steve Kerr was asked about Andrew Wiggins' aggressiveness yesterday on this very station with Willard and Dibbs. He was asked about Andrew Wiggins' aggressiveness, and here's what he had to say about it.
He was super aggressive, but I think part of what you saw too was the fact that Draymond and Jonathan were not out there. Those guys are pretty high usage, and Wiggs had the ball in his hands a lot more. So we went to him more often. He felt that responsibility, and I think he really enjoyed the opportunity. And good reminder to me, that we've got to get him the ball a little bit more than we do sometimes. Sometimes he gets lost in the shuffle a little bit. Draymond's pushing the ball. JK's got it. Steph and Clay are shooting. Wiggs can go 4 or 5 possessions without touching the ball sometimes, and that's a tough way to play. And I thought last night he did a great job of continuing to attack. And but again, the opportunity was greater for him because of the guys who were missing.
Okay, so that's Steve Kerr yesterday on this very station, 95.7 The Game, saying that the Wiggins aggressiveness conundrum is not just a case of aggressiveness or lack thereof. It is also partly due to opportunity. And Andrew Wiggins doesn't necessarily get the opportunity that he might need in order to be effective on a regular basis. But in Orlando, on Wednesday, what happened? Jonathan Kuminga did not play. Draymond Green got ejected less than 4 minutes into the game. What did that lead to? More opportunities for Andrew Wiggins. How did he respond? 23 points, and he willed you to a victory early in the fourth quarter. Tonight, no Klay Thompson, no Jonathan Kuminga. Again, what does Andrew Wiggins do? Puts up 20 points, 8 rebounds, and 8 assists. It's not a coincidence that you're getting the more aggressive Wiggins that we have pleaded for months now on nights when you're missing 2 of your more consistent offensive options and similar options, guys that fill similar roles than Andrew Wiggins does. It's not a coincidence. And I'm at a point where I look at this, I see the correlation between, say, Kuminga's absences, Klay's absences, Draymond's absences, and these quality Andrew Wiggins games, and I think, well, maybe this Warriors roster just isn't constructed in the most efficient way. You have a little bit of overlap in terms of talent and skill between Andrew Wiggins and Jonathan Kuminga. The conversation a couple of months ago, pre-trade deadline, pre-Jonathan Kuminga explosion, was, well, can Wiggins and Kuminga coexist? Can they work together on the floor at the same time? It hasn't worked yet. Well, it has a little bit now. It's been more so because of Kuminga's emergence as opposed to Wiggins playing great basketball. It has worked a little bit, but still, I think the problem persists, not necessarily because Wiggins and Kuminga somehow make each other worse when they're on the court together, but you have an overlap of talent and an overlap of skills. And when Kuminga is out there getting up 15 shots a game, it doesn't necessarily allow Wiggins the space he needs to stay aggressive on a consistent basis. And it brings back the point I was talking about for ages, it felt like, here on Warriors Wrap-Up and Warriors Lives before and after Warriors games on 95.7 The Game. It was the trade deadline conversation. What do the Warriors do? I didn't really think there was a home run move out there to be made, but there was a major part of me that thought it might be best for the Warriors to consolidate the roster a little bit. It might be, hey, let's move 2 or 3 of our pieces and get one decent one back in return, just to free up some spaces. And a lot of it is specifically the Wiggins-Kuminga conundrum, but it's also everybody else. I mean, Moses Moody, 4 for 5 from downtown tonight. Do you want him getting consistent minutes? I think I do. And if you clear up a little bit of the clutter on the roster, it frees up spots for these others that you've been hoping to get consistent minutes to. So I don't think there's, again, a home run move out there. There certainly wasn't at the trade deadline. You can say all you want about Pascal Siakam, but I don't think the Warriors were ever going to move off of Jonathan Kuminga. And if you weren't moving off of Kuminga, you probably weren't getting Siakam. But I felt that way, and I still feel this way now, and I think it might influence the moves the Warriors make in the offseason is I think this roster is constructed in a way that when they are at full strength and they have everybody available, there's a lot of overlap, and it doesn't necessarily promote what's best for each individual player. And I don't mean each individual player in terms of getting their numbers and their status and their recognition and feeding their egos. I don't mean it that way. I mean it in a what you're going to get from each individual player in a way that helps you influence winning basketball games. And I think that's the case with Andrew Wiggins, honestly. I mean, Steve Kerr said it yesterday, even before today's game. Without Klay Thompson, and he wasn't talking about tonight, he was talking about Wednesday, without Draymond Green and without Jonathan Kuminga, it allowed Wiggins the space and opportunity necessary to perform on a relatively high level. And now tonight, without Kuminga again and without Klay, what does Wiggins do? 20 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists. Because there's more opportunity for him. Consistent opportunity. He can settle in. He can stay aggressive. He feels and he knows that the ball's coming back to him and he can go to work. Now, maybe you have a conversation with Andrew and saying, hey, Andrew, if you're getting the ball every other possession or every fifth possession, I don't care. I want that aggressiveness from you every time you touch the ball, no matter when it is or how many possessions are between your touches. And I get that, but maybe Wiggins just isn't built that way. I don't know. It does seem, though, that when Wiggins has the more consistent opportunity, he tends to play a little bit better. So that's something to keep an eye on moving forward. Say if Kuminga misses Sunday, how does Wiggins play? If Kuminga returns, if Klay returns, how does Wiggins play at that point? Something to keep an eye on, and I think that's a conversation piece before a decision is made for the Warriors this offseason. I do think, and we have a little bit of a sample size here, but I do also think the sample is large enough over the course of the last couple of seasons where we can say, all right, like maybe there is something to this fact that the Warriors roster as currently constructed is a little bit too similar at certain spots, and it might hold a couple of players back individually. That's something that stood out to me tonight from this game. Now, it's not some Debbie Downer point like this roster as constructed can't win you anything. I'm not saying that. I just think it's not the most ideal roster construction. But ultimately, tonight's a major positive because you got that out of Andrew Wiggins. You got 20 points, 8 rebounds, and 8 assists out of him. Now, if you can harness that aggressiveness, that confidence, once Kuminga comes back and once Klay comes back, and hopefully Draymond Green, behaves himself on the court, then maybe you're looking at what feels like an entirely different basketball team come the play-in. And maybe you beat LeBron and the Lakers in LA. And then maybe you're matched up with Sabonis and Fox in Sacramento for a chance to go to the postseason. And who wouldn't pick the Warriors in a matchup like that after they won Game 7 in Sacramento just last year? Like, there is reason to be at least a little bit positive and confident and encouraged by what has happened, despite all the drama around Draymond and despite the loss on Sunday in Minnesota and all of that. I've long thought that Andrew Wiggins was the key to this whole thing, and it's why this season and last season at times was a struggle. But if you can manage to harness this kind of Wiggins moving forward, I think it goes a long way for the Warriors. And who knows? Maybe it impacts their decision in the offseason. 888-957-9570. 888-957-9570. That's the number. It's also the Comcast Business text line. The 510 chimes in saying, we had Steph, Klay, and Durant, and they all got enough shots, so there shouldn't be any excuse of an overlap and enough minutes for time with the ball. I hear your point, 510. I will say Steph, Klay, and Durant play entirely different positions, and Kuminga and Wiggins essentially play the same position. And Steph, Klay, and Dre are built one way. Wiggins is not built that way. Like, it's not an apples-to-apples comparison at all, 510 would be how I would answer to you. And it's not about minutes, necessarily. Wiggins gets his minutes. I mean, he kind of got ramped up a little bit once he came back from his 4-game absence, but 35 minutes, 31 minutes, 29 minutes, 25 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 minutes, 28 minutes. Like, he's getting a good chunk of minutes just about every single time he plays. It's not necessarily about minutes. It's about how the offensive attack, how the offensive plan factors him in, and how often it includes him. And I know this might, I'm getting a little bit of a hint if I'm thinking of this from like Wiggins' perspective. I'm getting a little bit of a selfish tone, I guess is what I could say. And I'm not saying that this is how Wiggins feels or thinks, but it almost does feel like Wiggins' success relies on the offense just getting him the ball and getting out of the way. No, it's not that, I don't think. I think it's just Wiggins needs to feel comfortable knowing when his opportunities are coming or how often or how consistent his opportunities are coming. And potentially with Clay available, with Kuminga available, with Draymond, he's not entirely comfortable with it. I don't know. What do you guys think? Because I could be making all this up. 888-957-9570. It's just something that stood out to me, given what Steve Kerr said yesterday about the Wiggins aggressiveness conversation. He said it's as much about consistent opportunity as it is about aggressiveness. And then you see the last two games without a couple of key players, both games, and Wiggins has arguably his best two-game stretch of the season. Is that a coincidence, or is there something there? And if there is something there, what does that say about the Warriors roster? And what does that mean for their moves in the offseason? I think they're all very valid questions at this stage for the Warriors. 888-957-9570. That's the number to call. It's also the Comcast Business text line. And as always, keeping an eye on the YouTube chat powered by First NorCal Credit Union. Let's get you a score update from Utah, where the Rockets are taking on the Jazz. Warriors, as we speak right now, are a game and a half ahead of the Rockets. If the Rockets fall, the Warriors would move to 2 games ahead of Houston for the 10 seed in the West. If the Rockets win, it would be a 1-game advantage for the Warriors. Of note, the Warriors already have locked up the tiebreaker over the Houston Rockets, so essentially add a game to any number of games they are ahead. The Rockets can't just be tied with the Warriors. They have to jump past the Warriors in order to pass them in the standings. And right now, with about 5:45 to go in the second quarter, it is 33-26 Utah in Utah. So the Rockets offense really struggling in that game. They kind of look like the Charlotte Hornets shooting the basketball right now. The Rockets are struggling, and they are down by 7 about midway through the second quarter in Utah. Warriors fans are big Utah Jazz fans today. Again, the score 33-26 Utah in favor of the Houston Rockets right now. Warriors win in Charlotte today, 115-97. It was a little bit of a sleepy start for the Warriors. At halftime, they only led by 5. 50-45 was the score at the half. And then the Warriors came out and dominated the second half. They outscored the Hornets 65-52 in the second half, and it was a fantastic start to the third quarter for the Warriors. The third quarter as a whole was 39-26, and it was a 21-9 run out of the halftime break. And something that our caller Drew Down mentioned a handful of minutes ago was the Steph Curry buzzer-beating 3 at the end of the first half that kind of gave them some momentum going in to the halftime break, and then they came back out on fire. So that 21-9 run, as I mentioned, to begin the third. You add on the Steph Curry 3 that turned a 2-point lead, which would have felt really bad, into a 5-point lead at half. You're looking at a 24-9 run spanning quarters 2 and 3, and that put the Warriors up by 17 with about 6 to go in the third, and the lead would get up to 23 at one point. The Hornets would get back within 16 or 17, I think, in the fourth quarter, but the result was never in doubt. It was that run to begin the third that changed this game, and I think you got to thank the Steph Curry buzzer-beating 3 to end the first half as well, because without that, who knows how the Warriors come out of the halftime break without that. But it was a little bit of a sleepy start. It felt like the Warriors were playing down to their competition a little bit, only lead by 5 at half, and if it was not for that Steph 3 at the buzzer, you'd only have a 2-point lead. Sleepy start, Warriors playing down to the competition. It was a relatively lifeless crowd, it felt like, in Charlotte, except for when Steph would take a shot and make a shot. That was the loudest they would get all night. But it kind of felt like the Warriors were sleepwalking a little bit through this first half, and there were some turnovers, not a terrible amount of them, but when they did happen, they were live ball turnovers that led to buckets for the Hornets, but the Warriors turned it all around in the second half. Again, they outscore the Charlotte Hornets 65-52 in the second half, en route to a 115-97 victory over the Charlotte Hornets. All right, it's Warriors wrap up here on 95.7 The Game. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll hear from Steve Kerr. He addressed the media post-game. That's coming up on the other side. Also, we'll take your calls to wrap things up. 888-957-9570. All that and more coming up on Warriors Wrap Up here on 95.7 The Game. It's Mark Randy with you. The Dubs beat the Hornets 115-97. They've won 3 in a row. They have guaranteed themselves a winning road trip, and they've held each of their last 3 opponents under 100 points in each game. How about that for these 2023-24 Warriors? 3 consecutive opponents held under 100 points. All right, more Warriors Wrap Up with Mark Randy coming up next on 95.7 The Game.
Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate restrictions apply.
sensation. And another donation by Rakuten to the Warriors Community Foundation. Wow. He just put that one through hard.
Now back to Warriors Wrap-Up on 95.7 The Game.
How good was Trayce Jackson-Davis tonight? The rookie playing well in the starting lineup. He played a total of 30 minutes and 48 seconds, 18 points, 8 rebounds, 9 of 13 from the field, and I don't think he gets enough credit for the type of finisher that he is. It's not always easy finishes, uncontested dunks, wide open layups. He's showing an array of moves. He's got great footwork. He's got great timing. He knows how to get defenders off balance, use a head fake, use a pump fake, use a jab step, even from in close. He's got some moves to him down in the paint, and he's playing really well right now. Tonight was one of his better games, 18 points. 8 rebounds, 9 of 13 from the field. He was awesome, specifically in the second half when the Warriors were awesome. They win this game 115-97. They used a dominant second half, specifically a dominant third quarter. They outscore the Hornets in the second half 65-52 after a relatively sleepy first half. And then the third quarter, they woke up. 39-26 was the advantage for the Warriors. In the third quarter, they outscore the Hornets by 13 in the quarter. They win this game by 18 as a whole. So they win quarters 1, 2, and 4 by 5. They win quarter 3 by 13. That's the difference in this basketball game. It was quarter 3 for the Warriors, led by Andrew Wiggins, who was really good in this game. With 20 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists. I mentioned the 18 from Trayce Jackson-Davis, 23 from Steph Curry, and 15 from Moses Moody off the bench. Also, Chris Paul with 11 in a spot start in replace of Klay Thompson. He was good as well. 11 points, 7 rebounds, and 9 assists. Kind of odd statistically. He had 4 turnovers. There were a couple of passes that were too tall for his intended target in the first half, but still, Chris Paul with a good floor game. 11, 7, and 9 for Chris Paul in a spot start. Warriors got help from up and down the rotation. Draymond Green, in his return after being ejected early on Wednesday in Orlando, was solid with 8 points, had 8 rebounds, 4 assists as well. He played 28 minutes. Missed both the threes that he took, but he was his normal solid self around offensively and defensively, and the Warriors used that to beat one of the worst teams in the NBA, 115-97. The Warriors are now 39-34. They improved to 21-15 on the road, by the way. They're 6 games over on the road. If you would have told me that preseason, the Warriors at this stage of the year would be 6 games over 500 on the road, I would have told you they're probably like the 2 seed in the Western Conference. But because they've been so bad at home, now 18-19 at home, they're fighting for the 10th seed. Although they did get some help. The Lakers, who are the 9, did lose earlier today to Orlando, which means the Warriors, as it stands right now, are only a game and a half behind the Lakers for the 9. If you string wins together, the 9 is still possible. That would mean the Warriors would host the 10, most likely the Lakers in the 9-10 game, but considering how the Warriors have played at home and on the road, maybe they want to be the 10 instead of the 9. I don't know. That's mostly a joke. You always want to be at home, but it's getting to a point where you're a little confused considering how they have played home and away so far this year. We will continue to keep an eye on the Houston game. They are in Utah right now in action. It might be halftime now, and indeed it is. At the half, the Jazz over the Rockets, 47-41 in Utah. A 6-point lead for Utah over Houston at the half on the road in Utah for the Houston Rockets. 6-point lead for the Jazz over the Rockets. All right, Warriors wrap up on 95.7 The Game. We'll hear from Steve Kerr in a minute. But first, out to the phones we go, 888-957-9570. Up next is Bill in San Carlos. Bill, what's up? You're on a Warriors wrap up on 95.7 The Game. How you doing today, Bill?
I'm well. Thank you for taking my call.
Of course, Bill. What's on your mind?
I was just listening while driving home from work, and I felt compelled to call because I'm a huge Andrew Wiggins fan. I love the man's character and commitment to the Warriors. I think he loves being a Warrior, the culture, the team, the family atmosphere. And I think that his experience in Minnesota and the expectations that went along with being there and being a number one pick have tempered his game in some respects such that he loves, even thrives, without those expectations and being the number one offensive threat, maybe even doesn't want to be the number two offensive threat. And yet when he sees that some of his teammates, superstars, some of them are struggling, and he realizes he needs to step it up offensively, because we all know he's a great defensive player. He sometimes struggles to flip that switch in a way that Klay Thompson, we all know he can get red hot quickly, or Steph Curry can just turn that switch and all of a sudden they are red hot. It's a little bit tougher for Andrew to do that. But again, he cares. I love his character.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. I think you got a lot of truth to that when it comes to his experience in Minnesota. It wasn't always the smoothest, and he got you 20 a night, more so because he just had the ball every single possession. And I think you are. I don't think he strives, wants, demands to be the one, maybe not even the two. For me, it's less about those titles and more what's important to him, I think, is knowing when he's going to have his opportunity to score, when the offense is designed around him, when Kerr holds up, 4 fingers or whatever the call is and says, all right, this one's for Andrew. Like, this is XYZ, whatever the play name is. It's designed for Andrew. I think he just needs a little bit more, structure to what he's asked to do. And like when they won the championship, he was their second best player. I'm not so sure if he was necessarily their second offensive option. I mean, Steph was number 1, number 2, number 3, if you could say it that way. I mean, Klay was getting up a lot of shots. He wasn't terribly efficient shooting in that postseason run, specifically in the finals. But Wiggins got so much of his in, we're going to post you up. And we're just going to give this one to you. We're going to post you up on the block, whether you've got, a switch and just take your man, or you got the big man switched on and drive past him, Andrew. Like, that's where he thrives. And I don't think this year, when you have the emergence of Jonathan Kuminga into the starting lineup specifically, and you got Brandon Pajemski starting, and you got all these other guys starting who are ball handlers and who demand the ball, demand the rock, like, you sometimes get Andrew Wiggins lost in the shuffle. Like, who is posting up more often, Kuminga or Wiggins? It's Kuminga by a mile, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, because Kuminga has proven to be very good at that. But if I'm looking at it from Wiggins' perspective, I can see where maybe it becomes a little bit difficult, locking in every single possession when you aren't really sure when your chance is going to come. I think there might be a little bit of truth to that for Andrew Wiggins. And the last couple of games have certainly backed that up, because he's gotten more consistent opportunities with the ball in his hands, and he's delivered. Now, we'll see if it continues, even if these guys return, which they will. It's nothing serious for both Kuminga and Klay. We'll see how maybe the offense looks a little bit different. If Steve Kerr and company have learned somewhat of a lesson here, who knows? We'll see if the offense looks any different when they are back to full strength. Speaking of Steve Kerr, let's hear from the Warriors head coach post-game, addressing the media in the locker room after the Warriors knock off the Hornets. Final score 115-97. The Warriors have guaranteed themselves a winning road trip. Here is Warriors head coach Steve Kerr post-game tonight in Charlotte.
I just liked the aggressiveness. I liked the connection. We had 35 assists, and guys really did a good job of sharing the ball and creating good scoring opportunities for each other. And I thought the defense was pretty good for the most part. So another good road win.
3 straight games holding opponents to fewer than 100 points. What's clicking on the defensive end of the floor right now?
Well, Wiggs is playing great. He put a lot of pressure on the ball again tonight, which is important for us. And I like the Draymond-Trace combination, having Trace as a shot blocker. He had 3 of them tonight with Draymond, kind of playing middle linebacker back there. That's a good combination. So, it's a different look for us, but it's been effective.
Clay was a late scratch with the right knee soreness,
Yeah.
I believe. The similar thing is to Jonathan, and I guess when did it come up? Is it a long-term concern?
He said he felt it a little bit in the Orlando game, and he thought he was going to be fine. But during warm-ups, pregame, it kind of stiffened up on him. And Rick worked with him on the table before the game, and decided it was not a good idea for him to play.
TBD for Santa.
Yeah, we'll see.
Going back to the combination of Trace and Draymond, I mean, obviously you touched on how good the quality of the offense was tonight, but what did you think of the shots you guys got when those two were out there paired together?
Yeah, we got some good shots. I mean, Chris was great, 9 assists. Playing Chris with Trace is always a good thing, with that lob threat that Trace provides, and, Chris, you're running pick and roll. And then, Draymond, he's used to being a four-man in this league. He's obviously shot the ball really well this year, but he's so smart in terms of creating shots, even if there's not as much space. Just dribble handoffs and with his screening and keeping the ball, off a fake DHO, all that stuff. Draymond's really clever, so we can make up for some of the lack of spacing. If he's at the 4 with Trace at the 5.
Coach, how did you think Steph played, and also that Draymond and Grant Williams interaction? What'd you see there, and why did you count?
Steph. This is what Steph does every night, so nothing jumped out. Even though he made several, spectacular plays, both passes and shots. But this is what he does night after night. The Draymond Grant Williams thing was nothing, and they just got tangled up. And if it wasn't Draymond, you wouldn't even be asking me that. So not a big deal.
Do you look at the road wins you've had this year as something that plays in April and May?
Yeah, I mean, we've been better on the road than at home. It's bizarre. A year ago, it was the complete opposite. We were 33-8 at home and 0-41 on the road, or so. So who knows? I mean, it's hard to explain these things, but the main thing is we're playing well right now. We're in a pretty good groove. Wiggs, this is the best Wiggs has been all year. Trace is coming into his own. Gary Payton looks fantastic. So, we're coming along well. And obviously we're in a fight with a lot of teams. So the West is just loaded this year. And, a year ago, I think we probably had a similar record. I think we ended up 43-39. We were the 6th seed, This year we could end up with a better record and be the 10th seed. So the league is just loaded. The West in particular is just loaded.
There's Warriors head coach Steve Kerr postgame today in Charlotte as the Warriors beat the Hornets 115-97. He was talking about the Warriors' home and road records. With the win today, they improved to 21-15 away from home. They're 18-19 at Chase Center this year, and I don't know how many of you guys kept watching the postgame show on NBC Sports Bay Area tonight. I guess not technically the postgame show, but right after the game ended when Fitz and Kalena interviewed Stephen Curry on the floor, and they asked him about the home record, the road record. The Warriors have now won 13 of their last 16 road games, and Steph said, quote, we might need to stay in a hotel in San Francisco. That's how bad it's been for the Warriors at home, and on the flip side, how good it's been for them on the road. Again, if you told me that this Warriors team would be 21-15 away from Chase, I would have guessed they would be a 3 seed at worst in the West. And yet they're fighting for the 10 right now. The Lakers lost to the Pacers today. I believe I said in Orlando earlier. They were in Indiana. They lost to the Pacers. And the Warriors won. The Warriors are now a game and a half behind the Lakers for 9. And as we speak right now, the Rockets are trailing by 6 at halftime. The Warriors are a game and a half ahead of Houston for the 10. If Houston loses, the Warriors will be 2 games ahead of Houston going into the weekend. If the Houston Rockets come back and win, the Warriors will have a 1-game advantage. But regardless, some positive developments in the standings with the Lakers losing in Indiana earlier today. Now the Warriors a game and a half behind LA in the race for the 9 seed in the West, and there is one more Warriors-Lakers game coming up later on this year. Okay, Warriors wrap up here on 95.7 The Game. We do have one more piece of business to attend to. Of course, as always, to wrap things up, it is our hardest worker of the game, brought to you by the Alameda County Sheriff's Office, who works hard to serve the community. Are you looking for a career in law enforcement? Learn more about job opportunities at joinacso.com. And our hardest worker tonight, I got a couple of options, but I think I got to give it to... Oh, man, honestly, this is tough. This might be the hardest one I've had to choose in a while. Andrew Wiggins was awesome in this game with 28 and 8. Trace Jackson Davis, though, with 18 and 8 in his 30 minutes. Moses Moody came off the bench. I gave Wiggins a lot of airtime tonight. I gave him a lot of love for his performance the last couple of games, so I feel like I should share the rock, right? I'm going to go Trace Jackson Davis for our hardest worker of the game tonight. 18 points, 8 rebounds. He was 9 for 13 from the field. He had 4 offensive rebounds. Half of his 8 rebounds were on the offensive end. I think all of them led to scores. Maybe there was one where he put back, got the offensive rebound, put back, missed, got the offensive rebound again, and then finished. So he padded his stats a little bit with an easy missed shot and got it right back. But I think there were second chance points on all of those offensive rebounds for Trace Jackson Davis, and that is huge in a game like this, specifically in the first half where your offense is struggling. So Trace Jackson Davis, he gets our hardest worker of the game tonight. Again, brought to you by the Alameda County Sheriff's Office, and he is just developing right before our eyes. Okay, so the Warriors win today on the road in Charlotte, 115-97. The Warriors with the win are now 39 and 34. A game and a half separates them from 9, and a game and a half separates the Rockets from the Warriors at number 10. Up next for the Warriors is a chance to finish this road trip 4-1. They are in San Antonio on Sunday. Speaking of San Antonio, have you seen the score between the Knicks and the Spurs? The Spurs just closed out a 130-126 win over the Knicks in San Antonio. Victor Wembanyama put up 40 points, 20 rebounds, and 7 assists. The rookie Victor Wembanyama, 40 points, 20 rebounds, 7 assists, and that outclassed Jalen Brunson of the Knicks, who scored 61. Jalen Brunson, yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. Jalen Brunson had 61 in a losing effort because Wembanyama had 40 points, 20 rebounds, and 7 assists. Wembanyama is awaiting the Warriors in San Antonio on Sunday. Tip-off of that game is set for 4. That means pregame coverage begins at 3 right here on 95.7 The Game on Sunday, the 31st of March.
All right, go beat San Antonio.
Yeah, thanks, Tiny. I mean, they got to beat San Antonio. They do that on Sunday. Then that means a 4-1 road trip, which, considering how the road trip began last Sunday, a loss in Minnesota, that's awesome. If you end this with 4 consecutive wins, then you return home, you got Dallas, then you go right back out on the road for that big game against the Rockets, and then Dallas again on the road coming up in a little bit for the Warriors. All right, that'll do it for Warriors wrap-up tonight here on 95.7 The Game. Again, the Warriors beat the Hornets 115-97. For my man Sterling Bennett behind the glass, my name is Mark Randy signing off. Thanks so much for tuning in. Happy Friday. Warriors winners again. We'll catch up with you next time here on Warriors Wrap-Up on 95.7 The Game.
This March, Wendy's is fueling the madness with amazing deals on their hamburgers.